Using racist or speciesist rhetoric in order to put guilt on people for something their ancestors did or that society has done is just, it's just so wrong.
You are about to hear one vegan YouTuber being quoted, presenting the argument that if you merely stop eating meat yourself, that's not going to change anything. That's not going to save the world. That's not going to save the animals. But you have to do more than just passively remove yourself from the social system you're morally opposed to if you want to change it. Nothing surprising about that. Really kind of a self-evident truth in most circumstances, right? Then you're going to hear a counter-argument from a natural vegan that that's racist.
As beneficiaries of 10,000 plus years of human supremacy and of continuing violence against animals both in captivity and the wild, we are all in this position. We are beneficiaries of a violent conspiracy. Our homes, our gadgets, our streets, and yes, even our vegan food are products of violence against animals. And simply attempting to remove ourselves when we continue to benefit from this system of violence falls far short of our moral duty. So yes, participation in violence is shameful and unethical, but so too is inaction in the face of violence. So too is veganism without action. This is essentially the same racist argument that extremist social justice advocates make, that like all white people have to be actively vocal as anti-racist activists, otherwise they're racist and bad people. We inherit the sins of our fathers and we have to atone. We have racial guilt by vice of our skin color or our heritage. Demanding anti-racist activism from white people to like atone for the genetic sin of whiteness, pretty racist. Demanding animal rights activism from people due to the genetic sin of being human, pretty speciesist.
Nothing is going to change unless you change it. Nothing is going to change unless you get uncomfortable and actively take risks, actively make sacrifices to change the world. There's nothing racist. There's nothing racist whatsoever in recognizing the enormity of that challenge. Let's suppose the year is 1981 and you're living in a communist country. Could be Russia, could be China, could be a member of the Eastern Bloc. You're living in a communist system. And you just take up the attitude that, hey, you personally are morally opposed to communism. You think it's a bad political system. You can have a boycott. Or you're going to say, well, I personally refuse to take a position of authority within the Communist Party where I'm like really benefiting from this system. Maybe there are certain events you refuse to go to. Well, I'm not going to go to that concert. I'm not going to stand in the crowd cheering when the government has a parade for the military showing off our nuclear missiles. I personally am not going to clap and cheer for the Communist Party because, I just feel morally superior to this whole system that surrounds me and that in innumerable ways every day I still benefit from. It still paves my roads. It still provides me with electricity and drinking water. I'm still paying taxes into it. Probably you still participate in that system in a million ways that you have no control over, you have no ability to refuse, or you have no ability to refuse without terrible consequences. And you may be called in to be a witness against one of your fellow citizens. So one of your fellow citizens has dared to criticize the Communist Party, and then they call you in and say, now look, we're going to interrogate you, and either you're going to cooperate with us, or you're going to be the one who goes to jail instead of your friend. And you start making tough choices. But one thing is certain. You personally choosing to boycott the communist system is not going to change anything. Things won't change unless you and people like you actively take risks, actively make sacrifices, and fight to change the system. Right? And guess what? The odds are you're not going to win. The odds are if you fight, you're going to ruin your own life, you're going to ruin other people's lives, and you're going to die. and you're going to die in failure. It's very easy to tell the history of slavery just in terms of the successful slave rebellions, just in terms of the revolutions, the uprisings, the political lobbying that actually did succeed in liberating slaves. Do you want to stop to imagine how many slaves rose up in rebellion and tried to take their freedom and failed and were killed and were tortured to death? And what if you were a white person living in a slave society? Would you just take the passive attitude, oh, well, I personally don't want to own slaves. Well, I personally am not going to attend this event or that event and clap and applaud. I'm not going to go to this ball in a ballroom where they have slaves serving drinks because I'm opposed to that. I'm too morally pure to buy this particular product, this basket that's hand woven by slaves on a slave camp. I'm going to choose to buy a different basket that's made by white people. Or so. Is that going to end slavery? Is that going to change the system? And recognize the risks you take, the commitment you make may result in your death. And you may die without achieving your objectives or without advancing your society in the slightest way imaginable towards the abolition of slavery, the end of communism, right? Whichever example you want to choose. Did you ever hear about this thing, the Nazi Party? Did you ever hear about this in the history of Germany? Huh? Do you think if you were living in Nazi Germany, it would be a viable strategy for you or for your society as a whole to just sit back and do what Unnatural vegan says you should do? Just passively refuse to buy, refuse to believe in, refuse to actively benefit from that system, when the reality is, of course, you do benefit from it. If you just sit back and say that you personally wouldn't go to a Hitler rally, you personally wouldn't go and cheer for the Nazi Party as they take over your country, as they rule your country, as they start, engaging in eugenics, in slaughter, in murder of various kinds. Is it even enough if you just say that you personally wouldn't join the army to fight for Adolf Hitler when your whole society is in a state of war? Or do you make the commitment to join the resistance, to actually fight against Adolf Hitler? And again, in a sense, right, eventually the resistance won. Eventually, Hitler was defeated in many places around the world. Eventually, of course, slavery was defeated. But within your lifetime, for you and your circle of friends or colleagues, right, you may fight, you may lose, you may die, and you may die not knowing that victory was later to come. You may die with all your efforts being in vain, having joined the resistance. Okay. It takes real commitment. It takes real self-sacrifice. It even, in a sense, takes some heroism. And it's bizarre to me that all these things are unthinkable to Unnatural Vegan, as she so cynically and so stupidly tries to construe this argument as inherently racist. Now, what I'm about to do is in some ways the most important part of this video of all, and that is to argue against my own position, and thus to feel out the limits of its validity. Unnatural Vegan never does this. Incredibly few YouTubers do it. You should cultivate it as a habit of mind, not just in terms of public oratory, but in terms of your own thinking. Because the odds are, no matter how valid and morally self-righteous your position may seem, like at this moment of this video, it may seem like, oh boy, this guy in the yellow shirt, he's got a watertight argument, no holes in it, right? Gee, there's a difference between just passively boycotting something, especially when it's a social system that you actually contribute to and benefit from every day. Like you're still paying your taxes to the Communist Party, or you're still working in a factory that produces the guns that Adolf Hitler's army is using. Even if you refuse to be a member of the Nazi Party or refuse to march the army, you're part of that social system in the middle of the war, in a war economy. Gee, okay, that's a point. You can't just have a boycott and expect the system to change. You can't even live in a Muslim majority country like Saudi Arabia or Egypt and just say that you personally are going to be an atheist. Well, I'm going to stop going to the temple. I'm going to stop going to church. I'm going to stop going to the mosque. I personally am going to boycott religion and then expect society to change. No, Saudi Arabia is not going to change until you and people like you start taking risks, start doing something actively to change it. It can't come about through this passive boycott. Okay, so if I can here put down the microphone and just grandstand about how intellectually and morally superior I am to Unnatural Vegan. Okay, but there are limits to this argument I've presented to you. I'm aware, not of its invalidity, but of its limited validity. And I can argue against my own point. And you know what? It's really dangerous to present these things as if they're self-evident, universally valid truths. Okay? Prostitution. It's not enough for you personally to just walk past prostitutes on the street and not have sex with them, right? Nothing is going to change unless you change it. Nothing is going to change unless you become an activist against and opposed to your society or maybe just your neighborhood being dominated by prostitution. You see how this starts to become dangerous? You see the difficulty? Pornography. It's not enough for you personally to be morally opposed to pornography, to refuse to participate in it, and then to allow others to participate in it and be part of a sect. Abortion. It's not enough for you personally to choose not to have abortions. Do you see where this can lead? Do you see the problem? And my point here isn't that everyone should be pro-abortion or everyone should be anti-abortion or everyone should be pro-prostitution or everyone should be anti-prostitution. What we get into is the question of democracy, right? If you have a moral objection to prostitution, if you have a moral objection to pornography or abortion, right? Do you have the option of trying to pursue social change you desire, you imagine, through democratic means? Democratic means doesn't narrowly focus on or only include going to City Hall, going to Parliament, standing up, giving a deposition, right? One of the most democratic ways to pursue cultural change of all is through the arts. Because, of course, if you, like today, if we go to Parliament, we stand up and make a proposal to force the world to become vegan, pass a law making cheese illegal, you'll be laughed out of Parliament. You won't even get one, vote supporting you. We engage in filmmaking. We publish children's storybooks. We make cartoons. We start to change the culture. We start to raise awareness of the issue and its implications, right? And maybe in the passage of a century, it doesn't seem so ridiculous anymore to actually make cheese illegal, right? There was a time when just the suggestion that male circumcision be made illegal was not merely laughable, not merely scoff-worthy, but was presumed to be racist. It was presumed that the only reason anyone would be opposed to circumcision, cutting off part of an infant baby's penis, the only reason anyone could be opposed to this would be racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, right? And within my lifetime, I've seen step by step people get made aware. No. As a matter of scientific fact, as a matter of ethics, this is a real issue. Now, can you pursue this kind of social change democratically? Can you do it even culturally, as I say? In North Korea right now, you can't. Right? In North Korea, there's no democracy. There's no freedom of speech. There's no way a filmmaker in North Korea can produce an expose or critique of his society, right? In Saudi Arabia, right now, can you do it democratically? Even in Egypt, even in some of the so-called moderate Muslim countries, you'd be amazed when it comes to these. When it comes to the issues that really matter, just how little freedom you've got, just how little democracy there is, where it counts. So what is the line we draw between becoming a partisan fighting against the Nazis in Germany, risking your life, risking everything to oppose Mao Zedong, Lenin, or Stalin in a situation of outright dictatorship? And the means and ways we have at our disposal now as vegans.
So no, being a vegan animal rights activist is not the moral baseline. Being vegan is not the moral baseline either. We can all always do better. And just as an aside, again, maybe we can stop denigrating vegetarians. We're all on this road together. We're all making mistakes. We're all moral monsters. So, let's be nice. Reach out a hand instead of a stick.
Not everyone is a monster. Not everyone in Germany was a Nazi. Not everyone in Germany was a collaborator. And not everyone just passively participated in the Nazi social system while complaining amongst friends that they thought it was immoral and evil and wrong, and in these minor ways, refusing to attend rallies, refusing to cheer, maybe personally commenting that they felt Mein Kampf was a terrible book or something. No, we're not all monsters. We're not all the same. We're not all equal. We make ourselves extraordinary. We make ourselves heroic. Precisely by taking those steps, by taking those risks, by making those commitments to actively make the world a better place, not just passively sneer at the moral inferiority of our fellow human beings who continue to support the Nazi Party or continue to support Joseph Stalin just because it's convenient for them, or the people who continue to eat bacon, chicken, eggs, cheese in our society today.
Maybe we can practice doing punctual together.
Yes, that's all I needed. I need it all.